The morning sunlight spilled softly through the large windows of Lisa's Nashville dining room, lighting up the polished table where the family gathered for brunch. Sarah sat quietly, her fingers wrapped around a warm coffee cup that smelled strange, almost metallic. "Don't you want to try the coffee I made especially for you, honey?" her husband, Mark, asked with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Sarah looked at him, her heart uneasy. For 3 years of marriage, she'd learned to read the small things, the twitch of his jaw, the faint nervousness in his tone. Something was wrong with that coffee, she could feel it deep inside. Across the table, Lisa watched her with the faintest smirk. "Mark has become quite the barista lately," she said, stirring her untouched cup with slow precision. "He's been practicing different brewing methods just for you." The way she stressed for you made Sarah's stomach twist. She forced a smile. "How thoughtful," she replied softly, pretending to admire the drink. Her mind raced back to last month when she'd landed in urgent care after having tea at Lisa's house. The doctors never found the cause, but Lisa had insisted she'd made it exactly the same way she made hers. Sarah couldn't ignore the feeling that this wasn't just coincidence anymore. Mark looked relaxed, leaning back in his chair as if nothing was wrong, while Lisa's eyes flickered between Sarah and the cup. Sarah took a shallow breath and lifted the coffee to her lips, pretending to take a sip. She watched them carefully over the rim. Their eyes met for just a second, an exchange that confirmed everything she feared. Putting down the cup, she smiled faintly. "Oh, I just remembered I need to make a quick work call," she said. "Mind if I use your study, Lisa?" She stood up quickly, her heart racing with a plan forming in her mind. As she passed Lisa's chair, Sarah deliberately stumbled, bumping the table. "I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, steadying herself as the cups rattled. In the brief moment of confusion, she switched her cup with Lisa's, her hand steady despite the pounding in her chest. "Just try not to break anything in the study," Lisa said, her voice tight but polite. Sarah nodded and walked away calmly, though inside her thoughts screamed. Reaching the study door, she turned slightly and peeked back through the half-open space, just in time to see Lisa lifting the coffee cup to her lips. Her breath caught. A part of her wanted to shout to stop her, but another part whispered that she needed proof she hadn't imagined the pattern of accidents. Every hospital visit, every unexplained illness, had started with something Lisa prepared. Now, as Lisa took another sip, Sarah's stomach clenched. Mark looked at his phone, unconcerned. Then Lisa's hand trembled. She set down the cup, her face draining of color. "Mark," she whispered, her voice shaky. "Something's wrong." Mark looked up sharply, horror spreading over his face. "Lisa, what did you—" He froze, realizing the truth. The wrong cup. Sarah's pulse thundered in her ears as she stepped from the study doorway, her phone secretly recording the scene. Lisa's trembling hands gripped the edge of the table, knocking over her spoon as she tried to steady herself. "Mark, I feel dizzy," she gasped, clutching her stomach. Mark rushed toward her, panic written all over his face. "Lisa, what's happening? Talk to me," he cried, his voice cracking. Sarah's eyes stayed fixed on him, her mind a blur of disbelief and grim confirmation. "That wasn't supposed to be your cup," Mark whispered under his breath, the words slicing through the air like a confession. Sarah's chest tightened as she realized she finally had her proof. She grabbed her phone firmly and dialed 911, her tone calm despite the chaos around her. "Yes, there's an emergency at 1542 Maple Grove Drive," she said. "My sister-in-law appears to be having a severe reaction to something she drank." Lisa was now on the floor, her body shaking violently while Mark knelt beside her, shouting her name. "Hang on, Lisa, please hang on," he cried. Sarah's expression stayed cold, steady, her voice clear for the recording. The dispatcher's voice echoed through the speaker, asking her to stay on the line until help arrived. As sirens grew louder in the distance, Lisa's eyes flicked toward Sarah, filled with pain and sudden realization. "You switched, you knew," she gasped. Sarah met her gaze without flinching. "I had to know the truth," she said quietly. I've been sick too many times after eating or drinking anything you made. Mark's face twisted in confusion and guilt. Lisa, what did you put in it? He demanded, but Lisa only moaned, her voice weak. You said it would only make her sick. Just enough to keep her home for a few days. The words left her lips in a trembling whisper that made Sarah's stomach turn. The paramedics burst through the door, quickly assessing Lisa's condition. She's having a toxic reaction, one of them said, attaching monitors to her arm. Mark stumbled backward, pale as a ghost, while Sarah stood motionless near the window, her phone still recording. The paramedics loaded Lisa onto the stretcher, rushing her toward the waiting ambulance. I'll ride with her, Sarah said firmly, her voice cutting through the confusion. Mark reached out, his tone desperate. Sarah, please, it's not what you think, she stepped back. You'll have time to explain at the hospital, Mark. I'm sure the doctors will be very interested in knowing exactly what was in that coffee. At Nashville General Hospital, the sterile air smelled faintly of antiseptic and tension. Sarah sat in the waiting area, the recording still open on her phone. She replayed Mark's words over and over. That wasn't supposed to be your cup. It was enough to expose the truth she'd feared for months. A nurse approached, her face serious. Mrs. Bennett. The doctor would like to speak with you about your sister-in-law. Sarah rose to her feet, clutching her bag. Of course, she said softly, following her down the hall. Her heart pounded, not from fear this time but from relief. The lies were finally unraveling, and the truth was no longer hidden. Dr. Adams, a tall woman with sharp eyes and silver streaks in her hair, stood waiting outside Lisa's hospital room. Mrs. Bennett, she greeted firmly, we've stabilized your sister-in-law, but her blood work shows concerning levels of toxins. Could you tell me what happened before she fell ill? Sarah hesitated, then opened her phone. I think this will explain it better than I can, she said, pressing play. The doctor listened to Mark's panicked confession echoing through the recording, her expression darkening. This isn't accidental, Dr. Adams said quietly. What we found in her system isn't something you stumble upon. It's deliberate contamination. Sarah nodded slowly. I suspected for a while, she said. I've been hospitalized 3 times this year after meals at their home. Each time the doctor said it was food poisoning, but I knew it wasn't. Just then she noticed movement at the end of the hall. Mark standing there, his face pale, his eyes darting nervously. Sarah, he called softly, taking a hesitant step forward. Please, I can explain. Dr. Adams frowned. Sir, you shouldn't be here, she warned. Mark raised his hands. I just want to talk to my wife. But Sarah's calm stare silenced him before he could come closer. Explain what? Sarah said coldly. That you've been poisoning me with your sister's help. Mark swallowed hard, glancing between her and the doctor. It's not like that, he muttered. Lisa just wanted you to rest. She said you were overworking, and I thought maybe if you got sick for a few days. By slipping something into my coffee? Sarah interrupted sharply. The corridor went quiet. You didn't want me to rest, Mark. You wanted me to fail. His silence was answer enough. Dr. Adams reached for the phone clipped to her coat. Security, please come to room 412, she said calmly. 2 hospital guards appeared moments later, positioning themselves between Mark and Sarah. His composure cracked as he tried to explain. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Lisa said it would only cause mild nausea. She promised it wouldn't be dangerous. Sarah's heart ached at how easily he deflected blame. So, you risked my life because your sister said it was fine? She asked, her voice trembling with anger. Mark looked down, unable to meet her eyes. We just wanted to slow you down, that's all. By poisoning me for months, she shot back. You didn't slow me down, Mark. You made me stronger. A detective arrived soon after, a confident woman with brown skin and a calm but commanding tone. Detective Harris, she introduced herself, flipping open her notebook. I'll be handling this case. She turned to Sarah. I understand you have recordings and messages that support your claims. Sarah nodded, handing her phone over. Everything's on there. The conversation from brunch, the texts I found on Mark's phone, and even older recordings of things Lisa said. Detective Harris scrolled briefly, her face hardening as she read. This is solid evidence, she said. We'll make sure justice is served. Sarah leaned against the wall, finally letting out a shaky breath as the detective spoke with Dr. Adams. Her mind flashed back to the night she'd spent alone, doubled over in pain while Mark rubbed her back and told her it must have been something she ate. Every touch, every word of comfort now felt like a lie. We'll run toxicology tests on your earlier hospital samples, Dr. Adams said, returning to her side. If they match what we found in Lisa's system today, it will confirm a pattern of deliberate poisoning. Sarah nodded slowly. I knew it, she whispered. I just needed someone to believe me. Down the hall, Lisa was now awake, her pale face barely recognizable from her usual polished confidence. When she spotted Sarah standing outside the glass window, her expression shifted from pain to fear. You shouldn't have switched the cups, Lisa muttered weakly as Sarah stepped closer. You weren't supposed to get hurt, Sarah replied evenly. Neither was I. The detective entered behind her, voice firm. Lisa Anderson, you are under investigation for attempted poisoning and conspiracy to commit harm. Lisa's lips parted, her eyes wide. Wait, you can't, Mark said, but the rest of her sentence dissolved into a cough. Save it, Detective Harris said, motioning to the officers. We'll take your formal statement once you're stable. As the nurse adjusted Lisa's Sarah turned to leave, her body trembling from adrenaline. Mark was still sitting outside, guarded by security, his face buried in his hands. For the first time, Sarah saw not the charming husband she once loved, but a man exposed by his own greed and weakness. Why, Mark? She asked quietly as she passed him. He lifted his head, tears in his eyes. Because you were always ahead. Every deal, every client. You made me feel invisible. She stared at him in disbelief. So, you tried to kill me for that? Mark's shoulders slumped. Lisa said it wouldn't kill you, he murmured. Just enough to make you miss a few meetings. Sarah shook her head slowly. You both built your careers on jealousy, she said. But mine was built on work and integrity. Detective Harris approached. Mrs. Bennett, we'll need to search your home for any remaining substances or documents related to this case. Do you consent? Yes, Sarah said firmly. You'll find everything in Mark's office drawer. That's where I first noticed something strange. Harris nodded, already signaling her team to prepare the search warrant. Later that evening, Sarah sat alone in a quiet hospital corridor, the hum of fluorescent lights echoing above her. Through the window, she could see Lisa lying weakly in bed, while officers spoke to the doctor outside. Mark was being escorted away in handcuffs, his head bowed low. Sarah exhaled deeply, her chest tight with a mix of grief and relief. It's over, she whispered to herself. For the first time in months she felt safe, tired but safe. As Detective Harris returned with a nod of assurance, Sarah straightened her shoulders. The truth was finally out, but she knew this was only the beginning of her healing. The following morning, Sarah returned to the hospital to meet Detective Harris. The detective greeted her with a tired smile, holding a folder of reports. The lab confirmed it, she said. The toxins found in your blood from earlier hospital visits match what Lisa ingested yesterday. It was the same compound. Sarah's heart sank, even though she already knew the answer. So, it was them all along, she whispered. Harris nodded grimly. They planned this carefully. Different doses each time, just enough to make it look like food poisoning. But the evidence we gathered is airtight. They can't talk their way out of this. As Sarah walked down the corridor, she glanced into Lisa's room. Lisa's eyes met hers for a fleeting moment, haunted, defeated but still calculating. Sarah, she croaked, her voice weak. Tell them I didn't mean for it to go that far. Sarah paused by the doorway, her face expressionless. You meant for me to suffer, Lisa. You meant for me to fail. Lisa's eyes glistened, her lips trembling. It was Mark's idea, she whispered desperately. Sarah shook her head. No, you both made choices. And now you both have to live with them. She turned away, leaving Lisa staring at the ceiling in silence. When Sarah reached the lobby, she saw Mark sitting with his hands cuffed, guarded by 2 officers. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. Sarah, he said quietly as she approached. Please don't let them take everything. I can fix this. She stared at him for a long moment. You already did take everything, Mark, she said softly. My peace, my trust, my love. You destroyed all of it the moment you chose jealousy over honesty. He bowed his head, unable to speak. The officers led him away, his voice breaking into a sob as the door closed behind him. A few days later, Sarah sat in Detective Harris's office reviewing documents for her statement. The detective slid a pen across the table. You're one of the strongest women I've met, she said. You didn't just survive this, you exposed it. Sarah smiled faintly. I had to. No one else would have believed me. Harris nodded. Justice moves slowly, but it does move. They'll both be charged with attempted murder and conspiracy. Sarah exhaled, relief softening her features. I'm ready to testify, she said quietly. They thought they could silence me with poison. Now my voice will be the last thing they hear. The courtroom was packed when the trial began 2 months later. Sarah sat at the witness stand, her hands folded tightly together. Mark and Lisa sat beside their attorneys, looking far smaller than she remembered. The prosecutor played the recording Sarah had captured that day at brunch. Mark's voice filled the courtroom. That wasn't supposed to be your cup. Gasps rippled through the audience. Lisa wiped at her eyes, shaking her head as if denial could undo the evidence. Sarah kept her gaze steady. For once, she didn't feel afraid. She felt free. Dr. Adams took the stand next, explaining every toxic compound found in Sarah's system. Each incident increased in dosage, she testified. It shows clear intent to cause harm, not mere negligence. When the prosecutor asked how close Sarah came to death, Dr. Adams hesitated before answering. If she had consumed yesterday's coffee, she likely wouldn't have survived more than an hour. A heavy silence fell across the courtroom. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, a shiver running through her body. She'd been one sip away from never walking out of that dining room. When it was Lisa's turn to speak, her confident facade finally cracked. I didn't mean for her to die, she cried. I just wanted her to lose the Henderson client. She kept taking everything from me. My recognition, my chances. Mark said it was safe. The prosecutor's tone was cold. So you admit you participated in planning to harm your sister-in-law for professional gain? Lisa's voice broke. Yes, but it wasn't supposed to go that far. The jury's faces hardened, the sympathy fading from their eyes. Sarah looked at her and realized something painful. Lisa wasn't sorry for what she did, only that she got caught. The verdict came after 3 long weeks of testimony. The judge's gavel echoed like thunder through the silent courtroom. For the crimes of attempted murder, conspiracy, and possession of illegal toxins, the defendants, Mark Bennett and Lisa Anderson, are hereby sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Sarah didn't cry. She just sat still, her eyes on the floor, letting the words wash over her. When the guards led them away, Mark glanced back once, his face filled with regret. Lisa didn't look at all. For Sarah it was finally over. A year later, Sarah stood before a large audience at the Nashville Business Leaders Conference. The spotlight glowed softly as she delivered her keynote speech. Success, she said, her voice calm and strong, is not just about talent or ambition. It's about integrity and resilience. Sometimes the hardest battles we fight are not in boardrooms or offices, but at our own tables. The room fell silent, every eye on her. What matters, she continued, is that we rise again, wiser and stronger than before. Applause filled the hall as she smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in years. That evening, Sarah sat by her apartment window, watching the city lights shimmer below. The newspaper on her desk carried a small headline: Mark Bennett and Lisa Anderson begin prison sentences. She folded it neatly and placed it in a drawer, closing that chapter of her life for good. A new email popped up. It was from the Henderson client, confirming a 3-year contract renewal. Sarah smiled softly. The best revenge, she thought, wasn't revenge at all. It was peace, success, and freedom. She raised her coffee mug to the quiet night and whispered, "To truth, to strength, and to never doubting myself again."